What is going on, guys? I'm FlynnMasters, and today, in honor of my 4-year anniversary of my first Hell's Kitchen video, along with this being the 20-year anniversary of Hell's Kitchen as a whole, I figured that today, on May 30th, 2025, it would be a perfect time to do an updated Hell's Kitchen season ranking. Now, again, when I first did this season ranking 4 years ago to the day, there was only 19 seasons at the time. Now we've added 4 new seasons since, and there's certain seasons that I've dropped a bit on, and other seasons I have gained a bigger appreciation for after covering this show for the past 4 years. So with that said, guys, let's get right on into it one more time, starting with number 23, my least favorite season of Hell's Kitchen, and that is still season 9. And yeah, you all obviously know the reason why by now, but even despite the obvious, there's just other things I do not like. Like, for example, I know a lot of people think the blue team is an all-time great team. I literally have them a bottom 10 team, as I do not like over half that team. You have all the BS eliminations. Paul winning is, he's obviously my least favorite winner, so that's obviously not great. It just didn't feel like the show I loved watching this season, It just, I can never shake that feeling. Now, I will say, while Tommy is, of course, my second all-time favorite chef and favorite non-winner, that wasn't enough to even come close to saving the season, and the season 9 is still my least favorite season, and likely, and honestly, hopefully always will be. At number 22 is a change from my 2021 ranking, as I did decide to put All-Stars as my second least favorite, and as you'll see, it was a debate between this and the next season, as the next season we'll talk about was just extremely boring, whereas All-Stars was obviously not boring by any means, but it, of course, pisses so many fans off, with me included, with all the BS eliminations and toxic personalities coming back this season, and just simply outstaying their welcome. And I think what has put me over the edge is literally just doing Hell's Kitchen videos all these years, and putting in perspective that, the fact that we actually got an all-star season, something we never thought would happen, and it was as bad as it was, it is just so sad to think about, So if it was an all-star season, it would, of course, be a lot higher. But the fact that likely the only true All-Star season we'll ever get was as disappointing as it was is what puts this season at 22 for me. But speaking of that boring season, at number 21 is season 13, the most forgettable season of all time, for good reason. As yeah, even despite talking about the show all these years, I still can't tell you much about half this cast, especially those early boots, like my god. I will say, though, I have grown to appreciate the moments we do get this season, which are objectively few and far between, such as the dog food moment, Bryant's out of nowhere meltdown, Frank's all-time bad service and elimination, and of course everything involving Sterling. And not only that, but now I recognize how underrated of a villain Jennifer is. Sade is an all-time great third placer. I respect Latasha as a winner much more nowadays. So again, it's not much, but those little positives are what now puts the season above All-Stars, despite how painfully boring the season can be at times. Speaking of painfully boring, at number 20 is season 11, a season notorious for how much it drags on. And yeah, that really is what does the season in. We literally saw Nedra get eliminated in episode 13, and the season went 22 episodes in spite, when it could have ended in half that time. Freaking my god. But I mean, there are moments though, many people, myself included, have the opening night service as a top 5 episode. You have Zach's downfall, which to be fair, came at the cost of surviving over more deserving chefs. You have John's storyline, Mary's underdog run. So there are good things about the season. But again, the moments are so few and far between, especially on a season already dragged out. Not to mention some other negative moments, as while John's arc was obviously really cool, the blue team sucks narrative simply does not hold up nowadays, with how many bad blue teams we've had since. Janelle is an all-time boring winner, and in general the cast is pretty lackluster, both talent and personality-wise, despite there being 20 contestants. So despite the good, just a lot of bad, and even more so, just boring all-around episodes, which is why season 11 is a bottom 5 season for me. At number 19 is many people's least favorite season, for very good reason, with that being season 16. And yeah, there's only 4 words you need to say when explaining why the season is so awful, and those 4 words are season 16 blue team. They make for some of the most awful and disgusting moments in the show's history. However, that's exactly what makes their elimination so much more satisfying. And here's the thing, all their eliminations came at surprising times, at least in my opinion, when they could have very well lasted longer, making it that much more satisfying. For example, Johnny could have very well been given another chance over Wendy, but instead went home over her after he tried to bully her. I personally was super glad at the time to see Coop go home over Paulie. Matt and Paulie were both literally the second chef eliminated in a double boots round, when it could have simply been a single elimination. And Andrew didn't even get a black jacket. As bad as this team is, they all not only get their karma in the end, but in literally each case they could have been kept around, but they were eliminated at such great and satisfying times. And so due to that, despite how bad this season is, I am able to appreciate the feel-good story for the likes of Wendy, Kim, and Ryan, all outlasting them at certain points. And thus, while still a bottom 5 season, season 16 isn't totally at the bottom for me. At number 18 is a season that I truly hate to put this low, as I probably would not have had this 4-year run without it, but I do have to put the OG season 1. And yeah, the season that started it all, but more importantly, the season that gave us Michael Ray, a man so devilish that he would change the show for the better. But again, there's a reason why I say changed for the better, as this game show format with Ramsey not being his true Ramsey self quite yet, like it's just not it. Especially when you factor in all the other negatives, like, the show having to constantly explain how things work. It's a short season in general, so not much to show. Like, there's just no other around the fact that it's just not a very good season. And as much as I want to be nice for it being different and obviously how much it means to me, I'm sorry, I just cannot put season 1 much higher than 18. At number 17 might be one of my more controversial placements, as a good amount of people have this as a top 10 season, if not a top 5er. But I'm sorry, season 10 just does not do it for me. And like, if you enjoy this season, power to you. But like, I always find it strange when people despise season 16, yet love on season 10, as this season is damn near just as hard to watch. And while yes, the red team isn't as bad as the season 16 blue team, oh my god, are they so freaking toxic. As there's arguing in literally every episode besides the first and last red team service, sometimes multiple fights an episode. And not only that, but the season is so unnecessarily drawn out, similar to season 11. I mean, I guess they had to, I guess I take that back, because it was necessary to fully flesh out all the fights this season, so it wasn't unnecessary drawn out. But those 2-part episodes, again, just do not do much for me at all. Now, there are highlights for sure. Like, I love the services this season with all those individual kickouts, all the satisfying eliminations on that red team, and the blue team is one of my all-time favorite teams. And I know a lot of people have the season ranked so high, simply due to Christina. And like, she is my favorite chef this season, but like, despite her just being a freaking badass, like the red team just being so freaking toxic and these drawn out 2-part episodes is what really drags the season so low for me, landing here at number 17. At number 16 is just a fine season, with that being season 21, Battle of the Ages. And like, it's a totally inoffensive season, which, to be fair, is why I have it lower than a lot of people have it, because like I said, unless you're over the top bad in moments like seasons 9, 10, and 16, I want a bit of drama in my Hell's Kitchen, and this season obviously just doesn't have much of it, other than Tara's storyline, which even then was just kind of annoying in my opinion. I mean, Alex is a great winner, but literally the most obvious winner as well, which in my opinion hurts this season. The Battle of the Ages twist made for super imbalanced teams, a lot of bland characters, like, it's just not great. But there are plenty of fun characters as well. Like, I love Summer's turnaround this season. Alejandro had a very fun ride that I was invested in. The premiere service elimination was an all-time great one. We had some classic all-time bad dinner services, especially in this new era, like, for example, during Trenton's wedding and the Black Jackets. So, like, it has its good and bad moments, but even then, it's just nothing to get super invested in. So, it might be a low ranking for some, but I have Battle of the Ages at number 16. At number 15 is a season very similar to Battle of the Ages, and a lot of people think is honestly much worse. But at number 15, I do have season 20, Young Guns. And the big thing for me is that as a little early 20s person watching the season live, I guess it was cool and frankly surreal to see all these kids, getting a chance of a lifetime. And like I said, while I don't love super talented seasons, credit to these group of kids, for being as talented as they were. As I have to imagine being in front of Ramsey is 10 times scarier when you're college age, as opposed to, when you're like 30 or 35, 40 or so. And similar to 21, there are good moments, especially the beginning, which I think is what really outshines the next season. As we saw literally the worst chef in Hell's Kitchen history in my eyes be a complete train wreck in those first 2 episodes, followed by Chicken Gate right after. Like, generally an insane start to the season. But yeah, after that, really not much of note. And there is just not much to say about most of this cast, other than Trenton and Steve, as Trenton was a great winner and Steve is an all-time favorite of mine. So yeah, once again, just kind of a season that's there for me, but I do like it just a bit more than Battle of the Ages. At number 14 is the first true season of the show in season 2. And yeah, this season is absolutely dreadful in terms of talent, which to be fair, makes for fun moments, as again, this is when Ramsey, of course, truly shined as the icon he is, and this is the beginning of Hell's Kitchen that we all know and love. Now, obviously, I don't love the fact that Virginia made it to the final two, and there are some pretty big holes in this season, along with it being super short. So again, it's hard to get super invested. But similar to the season we'll talk about very shortly, it's just an enjoyable experience throughout. And seeing Ramsey go completely apeshit and do whatever he wants is just so hilarious. Not to mention you have two all-time beloved chefs here in Keith and Heather. The latter being my favorite female winner of all time. Sarah's satisfying elimination, the iconic double loss in Service 4. Like, while not amazing or anything, this truly feels like the OG season of Hell's Kitchen, which is why I have it higher than most here at 14. At number 13 is the most recent season, with that being season 23, Head Chefs Only. And I said this constantly throughout the season during the episode recaps, but the season is so strange to me as, like, there are so many moments throughout the season, but, like, for the actual enjoyment factor, I just feel something was missing about this season. And, you know, you could obviously point to the cast for that, which it's just simply not the most exciting cast in the world. But as you guys know, I can usually overlook all of that when there's so many moments in a season, such as the first ever triple elimination, Magali's elimination, Anthony being one of the most shocking early boots ever, Michelle and Ramsey talking Hannah and Egypt out of quitting, only for those two to make it to the final three, a Brandon shocking meltdown, Wit's downfall, and freaking Kyle winning this season, in my opinion, the best character to ever win the show. But, like, it just didn't spark me like the other seasons we'll talk about. And maybe that's because, you know, I would go right into a podcast after an episode instead of really relishing it. Maybe I'm intentionally not trying to be too biased due to the season just wrapping up and, you know, talking to a lot of the cast. So, I don't know. I'll be very interested to see where I, and for that matter, other fans rank this season a couple years from now. But as of today, I think 13 is a good spot for Head Chefs Only. On to number 12, essentially halfway through the list. And I feel season 8 is a perfect spot for this midway point. Because yeah, there are some bad moments and good moments, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? This season is just a complete train wreck, and it's almost impossible to take anything remotely seriously, and just have fun with the season. And that's why it's right in the middle of my list. Like, this is a season that you can just watch anytime and enjoy it, and it might not have any truly great moments or storylines like the seasons above or even below it, but it's just a fun ride, and that's why I think it's the perfect middle ranking. At number 11 is, in my opinion, the best season of the old school first 3 seasons, with that, of course, being season 3. And as much as I do appreciate season 2, this is simply a much better version, as you just have so much other things going on, as opposed to, you know, it just being a fun train wreck like season 2 is. Like, obviously, Julia's storyline is fantastic. Josh's ejection was probably the best moment in Hell's Kitchen history at that time. You have Melissa's downfall. You have the Hell's Bitches opening night, and also their disastrous episode 3 service with freaking Joanna and freaking Jen making life-threatening mistakes. And Rock would solidify himself as yet another great winner. But again, despite all that good, it's still just flat out a short season to where it's just impossible to invest in this season as much as the 10 seasons above it, which is why it does just miss out on my top 10. On to the top 10 now, and this was a controversial placement in 2021, and I'm sure it still will be here, but I do not care. I will always defend season 15. Now, I will admit the cast isn't great, like a lot of very forgettable early boots, and even late gamers like Danny, Ashley, Frank, and Jared are either meh or just flat out bad personalities. But other than that, the season is fantastic, in large part, at least due to me, the unpredictability of it. Like, again, obviously Ariel's a hated winner, and I don't like her either, but the fact that she actually did win is insane. Every chef was nominated this season at least once, and the journey for the winner was simply insanely unpredictable throughout, and you never truly knew who was going home each week. Jackie is one of my all-time favorite villains in the show's history. Kristen's arc is incredible. He got Mark being a forgotten meme. The all-time bad episode 5 service highlighted by Kevin's cold-blooded ejection. Joe is one of my all-time favorite underrated chefs. That Final Night breakfast service was somehow a disaster. Hassan's downfall. Like, I just have so much fun this season. Again, mainly due to how unpredictable it is. And just how different this is, you know, compared to a usual Hell's Kitchen season. And while a lot of people punish this season for that, to me, that's exactly what makes the season stand out in the best of ways, in my opinion. And that's why it's able to sneak its way into my top 10. On to the number 9 now. And this is the season I've dropped the most on since my original ranking, as this was a top 5er then. But now, here at number 9 is season 19. And a lot of you might be surprised by this, as I usually talk very highly of the season. But the thing is, that is mostly due to the cast, and as you guys can tell, I'm more of a moments person. I mean, they're both important, but I do love my moments when it comes to Hell's Kitchen. And this season just doesn't have many of them. I mean, Fabiola passing out was literally in my top 5 iconic moments video, which to be fair, I probably could have chosen something else, but like you get the idea. I mean, you do have moments here and there, like Kenneth's automatic elimination to start and Elliot being lost during service, made for a fun opening night. You have Mark's outburst, you have Declan seeing his parents, Cody ousting Mark, and Peter's ejection, but like, those are few and far between. It truly is mostly the cast that makes the season so great for a lot of people, and that's the thing. Despite there not being much this season, the cast is absolutely incredible for sure. Obviously, the Final Four plus Nikki make for some all-time beloved chefs. Mark's one of the best villains in the show's history, and even some of those early to mid-game boots are pretty fun as well, if not solely for the fact that they had so much potential. And even though, like, yeah, there aren't many standout moments, it's not like the season is actively bad or drags like the bottom tier seasons. So when you combine a generally fun season, in large part due to an all-time great and talented cast, that makes for a well above average season. Landing here at number 9, it's just not a top 5er in my opinion. On to number 8, the first season of the Golden Era, though not quite as good, at least to me, as the other Golden Era seasons, with that being season 4. And yeah, the fact that this is still in the top 8 tells you how great this era is. But yeah, so many iconic moments here with Corey playing like Michael Wright early on, Jason satisfying a downfall, the first ever Quinn and Vanessa, the incredible Ben versus Matt Final 9 episode, with Ramsey just going off on the awful human being in Ben, with this in general being one of Ramsey's best seasons, the awful Black Jacket service, and for better or for worse, a true shocking winner. It's also just an iconic cast, as obviously the likes of Bobby and Petroza are super beloved. Corey and Christina's storyline is incredible. Again, say what you will about Matt and Ben, but their storyline is super interesting. Even a lot of early boots add something to the season. But I don't know, man, despite all the good here, something about this season has just never stuck the landing for me. Like, maybe it's just me wanting to defend another Golden Era season that I'm a lot higher on than most. But again, I guess to me, it's just simply one of those things where you can't explain why, but you just know you don't enjoy the season as much as you should. And hey, that's how good this season is, the fact that I feel that way and it's still my top 10. But despite many other people having the season in their top 5, for me, I think 8 is a good spot for season 4. At number 7 is a season that might be too low for some people. I personally think it's a bit overrated, but still obviously a really good season, with that being season 14. And yeah, I do find it strange when people put the season above some of the other top tier seasons we'll get into. I know a big reason for that is due to the talent this season, but as you guys can tell by now, there's simply so much more I look for in a season. But regardless, I still think it's a damn good season. And to me, it's like a tale of two halves, as there are a lot of funny donkeys this season. And the fact that they are on such a talented season makes them stand out so much more. Chris is an all-time great first boot, and Donkey for that matter, with how clueless she was. Michael acting like a complete buffoon highlights episode 3 as a whole, one of the best episodes in Hell's Kitchen history. You got the red team being a complete train wreck early on, highlighted by them trying to outcast Monique, only for Mika to go home, which in turn started Sarah's downfall. And it all culminates with Brett going home for taking a dump. But the second half of the season truly is a spectacle that we had never seen up until that point in Hell's Kitchen, with how talented most of these chefs were. And again, while I'm not as high on it as others, it's hard not to respect at least half this cast for how well they did. Now, one thing I absolutely did not like was Allison and Randy's eliminations over Josh. And again, despite the talent this season, I do think the second half of the season is a little bland due to how consistent the chefs were. I mean, that's not their fault, but at least in my opinion as a viewer, it just kind of met to me. And to be frank, despite all the talent, the final 2, and winner especially, is pretty obvious. But like at the same time, this season literally gave us the greatest chef ever in Macon. So like, it's kind of foolish to penalize the season for being obvious when she was on another level. And I should appreciate, her greatness. So yeah, while season 14 is a bit overrated to me, as you guys can see, I still think it's a damn good season. And it lands here at number 7. At number 6 is a season that was controversial when I first did my rankings, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And even though I am a bit lower on it now, I'm sorry, man, I still think season 7 is a great season. And like the biggest thing people say when knocking this season is that it is forgettable. And I'll be the first one to admit my bias for the season, as this, along with seasons 5 and 6, hold a special place in my heart, as I thought Hell's Kitchen was the greatest thing ever when watching as a kid, and thus I consider it part of the golden era. But I don't know, even when I try not to be biased, I still think this is a damn good and fun season. And I think that's a big thing. It may not have as many standout moments as other seasons, but I think the flow of the season just makes it as a whole enjoyable, with that in large part obviously being due to Ramsey still being in his absolute peak here. But like even outside of the general flow, I also just think there's, plenty of cool things about this season, such as the iconic opening night service where Ramsey would kick out nearly half the cast in an attempt to complete the opening night service. You have Salvatore's elimination, with Sal in general being one of the most beloved early boots ever. I really like the underdog runs of Jason and Autumn more than most. You have the complete downfall of Scott resulting in his iconic elimination, only to be followed by Benjamin also turning into a complete heel on the red team, with that red team in general just being so funny to me with how much of a train wreck they were. To which, hey, maybe I think that's another thing people don't like about this season is how bad this red team is. Kind of makes for, an unfair advantage for the blue team. But to me, they just make for amazing TV. And of course, the absolute highlight of the season is Nelka's meltdown, literally just behind Joseph, in my opinion, for Hell's Kitchen's greatest moment. And like that alone would put the season in the upper half. But yeah, so while I do get a bit more nowadays why people wouldn't consider this a golden era or top tier season, I really am surprised by the amount of people who just flat out do not like this season or think it's boring. And I don't know, maybe it is my bias, but season 7 is still damn near top 5 season for me, and I am not ashamed to admit that. On to the top 5 now, and at number 5 is probably the biggest change I've had since my first season ranking, as this was a middle tier for me 4 years ago, and now it's in the top 5 despite, there being 4 extra seasons, with one of those seasons being above this one. But at number 5 is season 18, Rookies versus Veterans. And that's the beauty of doing this channel all these years, as it's really made me appreciate how unique this season is, especially coming after All-Stars. That was such a disappointment. And, this group of returnees was so odd, so you thought we were in for another bad season. But damn, this season ended up being fantastic in spite. Obviously, like I said earlier, unpredictability is such a huge thing for me when it comes to enjoying a Hell's Kitchen season, more than most I know. And the fact that T and Kevin were such early boosts, were, returnees like Trev, Brett, and Ariel, who had a lot more to prove, had great runs or second chance, is just so cool to me. And obviously their competition was not father whatsoever, like a lot of people thought, other than Scott, an all-time funny and bad first boot. But yeah, me and Kane are some all-time beloved chefs due to just being complete spark plugs, with the blue team after the switch being one of my all-time favorite Hell's Kitchen teams. Obviously, a big negative this season is Scott Lee's bullying of Trev, and in general, the overall handling of Trev. But even that made for some all-time satisfying eliminations, with Trev surviving over Scott Lee and Jose back-to-back rounds, with Jose having the worst charity night performance ever, and Trev in general cemented his place as Hell's Kitchen's most polarizing chef this season, despite me being absolutely sure he would be an early boot. You got Jen's you trying to clown me ejection, Chris's emotional quit, and Ariel getting out of the season 6 shadow to dominate this season. There's just so much good in this season when it frankly had absolutely no right to be, which is why it is now a top 5 season for me. On to number 4, the final new season to talk about. And when this season first ended, I thought that it had a chance to be an all-time great season, but I needed some time to think about it to make sure, I wasn't in the moment. And yeah, a year after the season has now officially ended, I can officially call The American Dream a top 5 season of Hell's Kitchen. And again, obviously being the first season I podcasted about, I'm sure deep down, I'm sure that doesn't hurt. But even without it, I generally think it's an amazing season. Like, obviously it starts out with a bang, as Tad is an all-time great first boot. You have Renisha versus Carmen as still the only true fight of the 20s. Confetti Gate resulted in Melissa's shocking elimination. And the Black Jacket Lounge Challenge is a top 10 episode in the show's history. And of course, Ryan and Jonathan is one of the best final twos ever. Now, while granted the moments here aren't as standout as other seasons above or even below it, and the stretch from Jermaine to Toya going home is a pretty bland group of episodes in a row, I think what really makes the season stand out is the cast, as not only is it the most talented season of all time in my opinion, but one of the most likable ones as well, and not in a boring way either. Like I said, you got Tad as an amazing first boot. Renisha and Brad are some of the best early boots of all time in my opinion. Jason is the first and still only true villain of the 20s, but such a polarizing one as well. And the Black Jacket group are all extremely likable, highlighted by, in my opinion, Demir being a complete badass. So yeah, between the great moments, amazing cast, I truly believe that The American Dream is a top 5 season of Hell's Kitchen. The top 3 are my same top 3 from 2021, and frankly, I can't imagine how they'll ever be topped, with number 3 being season 5. And I mean, it's had everything you want from a Golden Era season, as this was Ramsey at his angriest, causing for some all-time great freakouts on the likes of Colleen, Seth, and Ben, and of course, his angriest moment ever on Giovanni. And Ramsey alone makes the season top tier, But again, there's also so many other great and iconic moments this season. You got, Robert's incredibly emotional moments. You have the back-to-back ejections of Jay and Lacey, Carol being the first ever chef to be eliminated from the winning team, and of course, probably still the most competitive finale in Hell's Kitchen history for the best of reasons in Paula versus Danny. Just very little to complain about for season 5. A top tier season for sure, and it lands here at number 3. At number 2 is season 12, and just incredible how a season destined to be like season 11 would be this iconic of a season. And yeah, I've made a video on this season, and as I said in the video, there's something happening in pretty much every episode. I mean, obviously the first 3 episodes are iconic, which I know a lot of people don't like. I've never understood that, as it is so freaking wild, and made the season so unpredictable out of the gate. You got, speaking of gates, you got Pizzagate, Jessica throwing Bev under the bus, only to really go home the following episode, and one of the saddest moments ever. The iconic Final 11 Blue Team service with Gabriel screwing over Ralph. Anton's general downfall, highlighted by Andy blowing up on him. Gabriel's run this season is insane, as he almost got a black jacket, only to get ejected at the Final 7, the round before. Joy's shocking Final 5 quit, and of course, Scott somehow, someway, outlasting all of the obstacles in his way to win the season, and go down as Hell's Kitchen's greatest leader. Again, we had some all-time beloved chefs this season, with the mentioned Scott, Rochelle, Jason getting a second chance this season and making the finale is incredible. And going back to my point about this being a long season, like the fact that we had 20 episodes this season and there is something of note and exciting happening in pretty much each one is freaking amazing. And that's why season 12 is my second favorite season of Hell's Kitchen. But of course, at number 1, the greatest Hell's Kitchen season of all time, and for that matter, one of the best seasons of television ever, is season 6. And yeah, I don't need to beat the dead horse here, as again, when simply comparing seasons of Hell's Kitchen as like a Hell's Kitchen fan, like I could see the arguments why you might enjoy other seasons more. But like objectively speaking, this is literally an incredible season of TV. Just, when looking at these moments, I mean, again, you have JP, this Belgian maitre d' pretty boy, going freaking one-on-one with Van, literally the buffest dude to ever enter Hell's Kitchen. Like, the odds like JP going one-on-one with a contestant in general is so low, much less that it happens to be freaking Van. Like, that is just incredible. You got Tennille going from a for sure early boot, and pulling a Joseph for that matter, to, being Dave and Kevin's biggest competition at the end. Obviously, speaking of those two, Dave and Kevin's storyline, what else needs to be said about that other than just insane? And of course, Joseph going one-on-one with Ramsey, one of the best TV moments ever. Like, this is stuff literally out of a movie script. And the fact that these like 1 in a million moments all happen in the same season is flat out insane. And like those moments alone make this number 1, but also the cast in general is amazing with some all-time beloved chefs. This is Ramsey in his prime. You got Robert's storyline as the first ever 2-time chef. The iconic opening night service. I mean, if you appreciate television in any sense, like, I just cannot fathom how you could dislike this season. Like, if some random dude watched Hell's Kitchen, I could see him, him thinking every season is trash, just reality trash. But I cannot see him, hating season 6. I could see that random person appreciating this season for what it represents as a television season. And that's something no other season of Hell's Kitchen can say. And that is why I believe season 6 will always be the GOAT season of Hell's Kitchen. So there you have it, guys. My updated season ranking of the now all 23 seasons of Hell's Kitchen. Let me know what your list would look like in the comments below. And be sure to hit that subscribe and like button so I can continue to cover the show for another 4 years and beyond. And with all that said, take care everyone, and I'll see you next time.